About the earlier subject spoke about weighing and sharpening the knife. Now the Mishnah is very interesting because this Mishnah is very similar to two Mishnahs ago, three Mishnahs ago. We spoke about people got together on Yontif and they want to shecht an animal and divide it. So it said you can't talk money. You could say you want a half an animal, a quarter, but you can't say that you want a certain amount of value. I want 100 shekel worth. So this Mishnah is very similar. Here doesn't talk about friends. Here it talks about the tabach. There's a butcher that's going to shecht and divide the meat to those who want to buy it. They're not going to talk any. So it says, don't talk money. So the Mepharshim of the Mishnah have difficulty. What does this Mishnah say different than the Mishnah before? Before it's the same Yisod. I don't know if they say definite pshat, but it's very similar to a daf ago. So the Mishnah reads, the shochet, the tabach, he shouldn't say to him, weigh out for me a dinner's worth of meat. You can't talk money. But he checks and he divides it without saying any money, and then they'll figure out afterwards how much he took. And the Gemara is going to say right away that you could say an amount that you want, amount of meat, but don't say in value how much you want. They have a difficulty also. This word of shkol, this word shkol is very difficult. As we said before, you're not allowed to measure either. Oh, I'm sorry, this word shkol. So some have different gears of tain. Surely you're not allowed to measure, but just give me, don't say give me a dinner's worth of meat because you can't talk money. So he checks and he divides it, and now the Gemara is going to talk about how he divided it, that he should know how much he's giving each person. How do you do? It means if you what day? The besura, that type of the test. The besura army tarta upalgu tarta, and in Narash, these names are different places that have different names. We'll see in a second what that means. In Surah, they used to say a tarta or half a tarta. In a name of a place used to say chilka or half a chilka. From the word uzia, or palgu uzia, the nahar code of a masamachasi. These places they said river or palgu river. So the Gemara gives a few examples of different places. Either the Surah, Narash, Pompadisa, nahar code and masamachasi. There are different ways of calling these pieces. So Rashi learns that all these are cuts, a cut of meat. I think in English we would say a cut. The way Rashi explains it is saying a cut. You go to now, of course, there are different cuts. There's going to be the shoulder and the rib and all kinds of different parts. So that's going to be a Gemara later on. You also, of course, you can say which part of meat you want. But let's say within that cut, you want to say that you want a half of it, that you want a quarter of it. So that's what the Gemara seems to say. That you say, so I want a cut of meat. You say which cut of meat. Then if you want the whole cut, you say, give me the whole cut. And they're regular, like the butchers, they all have a certain amount, the way they cut up the meat. I think it's a regular, standardized, international already, that number one, number two, number three, there are different cuts. So you say that you want that whole cut, or you want a half or a quarter, whatever you might want. And that's the way afterwards, they'll come afterwards to the butcher, and they'll pay after Yontif how much he took.
Yesterday, did you know anything about weights, about weighing?
Yesterday's sugi was all about weight. That was the Chav Ches was all about weight.
So you're allowed to weigh?
Over there's not allowed to weigh. You're not allowed to weigh. That's why we said that the word shkol over here is difficult. Take out the word shkol, and it means not weighing. So here it talks about not mentioning money. So if so, how are you going to make clear how much you took? So talk about how much of the cut did you take. And Rashi just says that all these names are names of the cut, that cuts. The word cut in English, that's what they used to call it over there. Either a tarta or a chilka or a uzia or a riva. That was the names that they called for a cut. Of course, you're allowed to say which cut you want, but then how much of the cut? So say how much of the cut you want, and that's the way they'll come after the yontif. To the butcher will say, I took half of the rib, half of the rib of all the, whatever, the shoulder. The Re'ech Hanal learns a little different. Re'ech Hanal seems to say that these are kalim, nothing to do with meat. It has to do with a certain kli. And this is just the way of telling him how much he took. So if you have a certain kli, which is a certain, let's say a container of milk is a liter. Right. So give me a container of milk worth of liter of a meat. So it's just a way to say the volume and nothing to do with the meat.
Yeah, because or else if you give me a half of a shoulder, you don't know how much the shoulder.
How big the shoulder is, how big that particular meat. Yeah, yesterday, 2 days ago, whatever. Yesterday, the Gemara said that you take two animals and you say this is like that, and then you could come to that animal maybe. But here the Gemara doesn't say, but it could good. Right. So Re'ech Hanal says that it's talking about a certain object, and this is also considered like a shino. You're not even talking about the meat; you're just talking about that size, and they'll be able to know how much meat he took based on that kli. Okay, next issue. Next is about measuring. So we spoke about the weighing, and now we talk about measuring. It also seems that it's not the issue is about, even though you are allowed to sell, means nowadays we don't do any of this. But in the olden days, they used to have the stores open. The Jewish stores would open, and they would sell things. Of course, you didn't talk any money, and now you're not gonna weigh. Now it's gonna say you're not gonna measure either. And after the Chag, they would pay up whatever they owe. So they have to do it in a way that it shouldn't be too much weekday. It shouldn't be vachadik, as they say. So it shouldn't be up to the whole. So here it says that you're not allowed to measure, and with the measuring cup, that's going to be the issue now. And the Mishnah will say what you are allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. A person could say, means he comes into somebody's store and he says, fill up for me this kli. So he comes with the kli and fill it up, whatever wine, the case would be wine usually, and he would come with his own receptacle, with a container, and it fill it up for me. But even according to Tanakama, which we're going to see soon, if there's more machmir, but even according to Tanakama, that's makel, but avoloba mida. Even according to Tanakama, but mida not. So we don't know what that means yet. The Gemara is going to have a whole issue what these words mean. But you are allowed to say, fill up this cup, maladi klizeh, but mida not. And we'll see what that means. Rav Yehuda Omer, imoya kli shal mida lo yamalenu. Rav Yehuda's machmir more than the Tanakama, even what the Tanakama did permit. He says under some restriction. He says if the kli was a kli shal mida, a measuring vessel, so then don't use it, don't fill it up. So there's something that Tanakama permits, and the Yehuda says we don't know what that is. The Rashi says wait for the Gemara. We'll see right away. They're going to be two pshatim in the Gemara, but there's something that the Tanakama permits to fill up, and the Yehuda says not. But again, there's something that the Tanakama also holds as asa. Even according to Tanakama, something was asa. So we don't know what all that is. There's something that everybody agrees that is asa, and then there's something that the Tanakama permits, and the Yehuda says. Think about the measuring cup, so we'll see more in the Gemara. But the Gemara continues with a story. In this story, it seems that Rabbi Yehuda is coming to support himself, to bring a proof to himself that you're not allowed to use a kli shal mida. Ma'aseh ba'Abu Shol ben Batnis, shoyu mamali midos of Merev Yom Tov, and also l'tuchas b'Yom Tov. Abu Shol ben Batnis, he was a great Tana, but also he was a grocer, or he sold wine, whatever it was. And when on Yom Tov, he would also open up in order to give to people, but he didn't measure it out on Yom Tov. He would fill up his measurements before Yom Tov, and then when people would come to buy it on Yom Tov, he would give it to them pre-measured already. So it seems as Rabbi Yehuda is coming to bring a support to himself from Abu Shol ben Batnis. Like always, whenever it says Maisa, it's a Maisa that's coming to support, not a Maisa Listar. It's coming to support what was said. So Rabbi Yehuda is bringing a right to himself that Abu Shol ben Batnis was machmer not to use the kli mida. According to Tanakama, you'd be allowed to use a kli shal mida, and I say that you're not allowed to. Abu Shol ben Batnis did not. He used to fill up his measurements before Yom Tov and then give it on Yom Tov already pre-measured. But the way the Meiri explains is that Abu Shol and the Chachamim now are going to argue on Rabbi Yehuda and say that it's not a proof from Abu Shol ben Batnis. It's interesting, Abu Shol ben Batnis and Abu Shol is not the same person. There's Abu Shol ben Batnis and there's Abu Shol. Abu Shol seems to be a later Tana, and he's saying that the proof that the story said about Abu Shol ben Batnis is not accurate. Abu Shol says that Abu Shol ben Batnis after Moed also came. He didn't do it only on Yom Tov. He did it even on Chol Hamoed also. This thing that you're saying that he did a Chumrah of Yom Tov, that he didn't measure it on Yom Tov, no, it's not the pshat, because he used to do it on Chol Hamoed also. And here we have the Gersa right here, B'nei Beruah Midos, which they take out. Rashi takes it out. Rashi has two pshatim if you take it out or not. For the time being, we can take out these words. We'll see in the Gemara. We'll come back to it later what these words mean. But so far, just to leave it out, and we'll see in the Gemara how come he did it even on Chol Hamoed. But the point of Abu Shol is to say that don't derive from Abu Shol ben Batnis. The reason why he was machmir to fill up before Yom Tov was because Hilchas Yom Tov, that he didn't want to measure on Yom Tov. On Chol Hamoed, surely allowed to measure, and he was machmir even then that he wouldn't measure it out on Chol Hamoed, he would do it beforehand. So it wasn't because of the Chumash of Yom Tov, it's a different reason why he did it. We'll find out why. And then there's another opinion, even the weekday, the whole year round he would do it. Nothing to do with Yom Tov, nothing to do with Chol Hamoed. He always would fill up his measurements before. And here, Mitzvah Midos, Rashi explains when you have oil, and you have a measuring cup of oil, it takes a long time for all the oil to get out. You have to sit there for 5-10 minutes until everything oozes out. So he didn't want to wait and take such a long time that he should wait till the measuring cup empties out. So he would do it beforehand, the night before. He would measure out whatever it is, a liter of oil, and even though the cup that he's putting it into, the receptacle is not a measuring cup, he can't fill it up. He had the measuring cup was the measuring cup that he emptied out into this bottle. So he wanted to make sure that he got the whole measurement, whatever is selling a lug, liter, whatever it is. He wanted to get the whole thing out, so he didn't want to wait there for 5 minutes until the last drops came out. So he let it drop the whole night, and then in the morning he would know that it all finished. So again, they're saying that these chumras, according to the Miri, he says the pshat of the Mishnah is that don't bring a proof from Mabashol ben Batis that he did it on Yantif. He did it on Cholamoid, maybe even did it the whole year round. It wasn't because of Hilchas Yantif they didn't want to measure. It's because he had different cheshbonos. Soon we'll see Cholamoid cheshbonos, and maybe or even the whole year cheshbonos that he didn't want to take a long time to wait until everything oozed out, and therefore he did it beforehand. So back to the Mishnah, the subject was are you allowed to measure on Yantif? There was something that the Tanakhama permitted with a certain kind of a kli, and Abuda said you're not allowed to. There's something even Tanakhama holds you're not allowed to, which we don't know what all this is about yet. And then there was a question with the story about Baba Sholman Batis. Was he machmir? Or no, it was nothing to do with Yantif, but he's even Cholamoid for some reason, and even the whole year round because he didn't want to wait there until all the last drops came out. So the Gemara goes back to the issue that Tanakhama and Rabbi are arguing about. There's some kind of measuring cup that they're arguing about, and something that the Tanakhama himself also is not allowed to do. What's all that about? My avaloba mida. What do those words mean? Avaloba mida, that's the words of the Mishnah, words of the Tanakhama. Right here, it says avaloba mida. What do those words mean? My avaloba mida. What is the words of the Tanakhama? That the Tanakhama himself also holds that mida is asa. I'm a viuda mashmul. Avaloba kliyam yuchad lamida. Don't use a measuring cup. A cup which is designated for measuring, that's called, we call a measuring cup. A measuring cup. Don't use a measuring cup. So you come to the store, let's say over there, they didn't have like nowadays that the store has all kinds of bottles. You said, why should the store give bottles? Nowadays, you get the package for free or you pay for it. It's included in the price. But then the customer would come with his own kli and you'd fill it up. And the storekeeper would fill it up and he would take it home. So it says, then the conversation you're allowed to say, you come with your kli, you say, Malali kli, but it's something not, avaloba mida. So he says you can't use a measuring cup. Means that the customer could come with a kli, but he can't come with a measuring cup because that's called measuring. The storekeeper is going to be measuring out into the cup. So you can't use a kli amiyuchul amida. Avakli amid amida yamalan. So what does the Tanakhama be matir? A regular kli. And here it says even a kli omid lamida. So Rashi has some shadow here that it means. Rashi says that it means omid lamida means that it's on deck to be used for a measuring cup, but has not yet been used. Rashi is a little bit difficult. Rabbi Chanal seems to have an easier pshat. He says means that you know how much the cup measures, but not that it's a measuring cup. Nowadays we have many things like that. Nowadays everything's like that. A bottle, that it's a liter and a half. That this can is 400 grams. It says on it already. So even though it's not a measuring cup, you happen to know how much it is. So it will be very practical also that you go to the store with this bottle and you say fill up the bottle. You don't say anything. It's not a measuring cup, but I happen to know that it's a liter and a half. So it's not a measuring cup, but you do know the measurements. According to Tanakhama, you're allowed to do that. You're not allowed to use a measuring cup that's designated for measuring, but you're allowed to use a cup which you happen to know the measurement. It's used for other things also. It's clear that you're mishameshba. But since you know the measurement, you're allowed to do it. And that if is going to be machmir, you're not allowed to use that either. And if is coming to be machmir and say no, that since it's a cup, a kli, which you know how much the measurement is, also don't use that. You can take a kli which has no measurement and just say, fill it up. But if you know that this kli happens to hold a liter and a half, whatever it is, so then don't use it either. So we have a pshat in the Mishnah. The Mishnah reads very well now. Just to go back to the Mishnah, that according to the first pshat of Shmuel, a person can say Mali Klizeh. That means even if you happen to know how much that is, it's already a you know the measurement of the cup, but it's not a measuring cup. That's mutter. But don't use a measuring cup. And the Buddha says that if it's a kli shal mida, which means that you know what the measurement is, even though it's not a measuring cup, also it's awesome. So very nice. You have machlokes between Tanakhama and Rabbi Yehuda. There's going to be another pshat soon, but before that, it asks a kasha and a teretz. Alma, Rabbi Simchas Yamtiv, Rabbi Yehuda, L'chum, Rabban L'kula. And our Mishnah is the issue of Simchas Yamtiv. The Gemara looks at all these kulas. If anybody's mekel, it's because the factor of Simchas Yamtiv, that Yamtiv, you're going to be able to buy and sell in order to be able to get your wine, your oil. So Rabbi Yehuda was machmir, Rabban will mekel is because of Simchas Yamtiv. And the Gemara is going to ask a contradiction for the previous Mishnayos, where over there was the opposite. Rabbi Yehuda was mekel, Rabban was machmir, and we would think that each one has the issue on its own. But the Gemara initially thinks that it should all be the same category, are you machmir, or you mekel, Simchas Yamtiv. So in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda was the one who's machmir, and he says don't measure into a cup, even though it's not a measuring cup. And before, in the Mishnah before, about weighing, Rabbi Yehuda over there was the one who was mekel. We have that, we've heard the opposite.
Rabbi.
Yes, please.
The Rock uses a very telling lashon on Rabbi Yehuda here. He says, "Keilu modedu moicher." In other words, it seems to be going after the fact of what people know in their das and not the actual name or the normal only hishtamshus of the kli.
The whole issue here is because it looks like you're buying and selling. That's the issue. The issue that we're concerned with is that if you're measuring, so it looks like you're measuring in order to sell. So that's the whole issue over here by measuring cup and by we're going to see at the bottom of the page that even if you're not selling, also it's going to say that you're not supposed to measure because it looks like you're doing it to sell. So that's the issue. The issue is like you say because it looks like you're selling. So the boy is asking contradiction over here in who's machmer, who's mekel. That in our Mishnah is machmer ban mekel about measuring into a cup. We have the opposite. The Tanan in the previous Mishnah's previous page, yesterday's page. Over there, was talking about if you're allowed to weigh, and over there, everyone knows you're not allowed to weigh mamash on a scale, but the regular way. But the Abuda says that you're allowed to weigh against a kli or a kofas. Means you have two. You have the scale, and on one side you put the meat, on the other side you put a kli that you happen to know how much it weighs. It's not a weight. It's the kli which you happen to know how much it weighs, or a kofas that's a cleaver, and again you happen to know how much it weighs already, and then you can do it's kind of a shinur. And the Chachamim say no, don't use the scale at all. Don't look at the scale at all. So the Bana machmer over there. That's a more contradiction that in the Mishnah, in our Mishnah, Abuda is the machmer over there. Abuda is the maker. Amad Abuda l'kula v'an l'chumra. And that Mishnah, Abuda one was maker. The Gemara could say because Simchas Yontif. And over here, and the Bana ones are machmer. So it's a contradiction on both of them. Kasha Abuda, Kasha Bana, everybody's contradict themselves. How come? In our Mishnah is the opposite of the Mishnah before. The Gemara says no, it's not a contradiction. The Abuda lo kasha hasam b'she'enu omid l'mida. Achav omid l'mida. So it seems to say that each issue you have to take for itself. It's not one general idea. Simchas Yontif depends on each thing. Rabbi Yehuda over there says that the kli and the kofitz are not things that you usually use for a weight. That's why it's mutter. Over here, you're saying there's a kli that is omed l'mid. That's not a measuring cup, but you do know how much it contains. You know that it's a liter and a half. It's a regular standard bottle. So that's considered normal. That's considered uvda d'chol. That's considered the normal way. And the Rabbanan will say the opposite. That over there you're doing the regular way of using a scale, and even though using a kli which is not the regular weight, but it is something that people sometimes do in the weekday. Also, Rashi says, Mashenkin over here that he's not using a measuring cup. That's not uvda d'chol. So, in the words of the Gemara, I don't see the whole issue of both sides is it uvda d'chol or not? And each person, the Rabbanan of Yehuda, each one sees each case differently. Is this more uvda d'chol? Is this more uvda d'chol? You can't compare everything under the same subject. Each one depends on its own. So that was a pshat that we had in our Mishnah. What the Machlokes is talking about, everyone holds that you're not allowed to use a measuring cup. But if Machlokes was, are you allowed to use a cup which you happen to know the measurement? It's a standard measurement, or you know about it already. And are you allowed to say Malad Liklizeh according to Tanakama? Yes, according to Abuda not. And they were just reconciled the Mishnah before that the opposite, who's Machmer, who's Mekel, that each thing is on its own. You can't compare one to the next. All that was Shmuel, Abuda was Shmuel. And now the Gemara says another pshat in our Mishnah. Again, we're looking for what's the machlokes between Abuda and the Rabbanan that the Tanakama says that it's mutter, Abuda says it's asa. Those are the three words we're trying to figure out. That the Tanakama himself agrees that a midah is asa. So Rabbi's pshat is going to be more lenient than Shmuel's pshat. Shmuel said that everyone knows you're not allowed to use a measuring cup. The only question was, were you allowed to use a kli, which is not a measuring cup, but you know how much it is. But Rabbi is going to say, no, that according to Tanakama, you're even allowed to use a measuring cup. You're allowed to use a measuring cup as long as you don't say it. Don't say it's a measuring cup. Don't say this is a liter. The customer comes into the store, he happens to have a measuring cup, he knows that it's a liter, it says on it, whatever, it's a liter, it has the shna. He could say fill up the cup, but don't say fill up the liter. As long as you don't say it, it's okay. So it comes at a big leniency that according to Rabbi, Tanakama permits you to use a measuring cup. And that Abuda is going to be machmer. Don't use a measuring cup, even if you don't say anything. But he's not going to be machmer like Shmuel, that according to Yehuda said that you're not allowed to even use a kli, which is not a measuring cup. So according to Rav, you have leniencies. We're going to pass like Rav, and according to the Chachamim, and it comes out that you're even allowed to use a measuring cup as long as you don't say so. That's what comes out according to what the Gemara seems to say. And again, the next 10 lines is very interesting because it's not word for word the something we just had before. It means the contradiction we have from this Mishnah to the Mishnah before about weighing, that over there Abuda was the one who's makel, Rabbanan were machmer, here it's the opposite. So the Gemara goes through the same thing over again. If there's a difference between
Rebbe, the sound for me is very bad.
Anybody else? Is anybody else? I don't see what.
I hear well.
Okay, so I don't know, but I don't see anything on my side. Okay.
Hello, the sound is very bad.
I don't know, but we asked the other ones that are listening. They said that they do hear well, so it must be something. Back on. So where are we again? Yeah, let us open it up. So the Gemara now is very interesting that it's going to go over the same kasha teretz, which I think is my word for it. I didn't. Maybe there's some nuance that I didn't get over here, but the Gemara is going to go through the same kasha over again. Alma gabe semchas yantiv abuda lachumra v'abana lachula. The same kasha over again. You just changed pshat in the Mishnah. What are they arguing about? According to Reb Shmuel, they were arguing about are you allowed to use a kli which is not mamish a measuring cup. According to Rav, they're arguing are you allowed to use a measuring cup if you don't say it. So whatever the pshat is, now it goes back to the previous Mishnah, and it seems to be the same kasha and teretz. Alma gabe semchas yantiv abuda lachumra v'abana lachula. And our Mishnah Rabbanan are mekel and Abuda is machmir about using this measuring cup. The opposite in the Mishnah before we saw. Over there, the Abuda was the one who said you're allowed to use a scale in a certain way as long as you do a shinoi, and the Chum said you can't use a scale at all. You see the opposite. Abuda is the one who's making. Both of them contradict themselves, and then what's going to say the same teretz over again that each thing depends on itself. That's not a contradiction. Over there, the reason why I allow to clean the kufitz is because it's not something which is it's not a weighing utensil. That's why it's mutter. But over here, I don't allow you to use a measuring utensil, a measuring cup. First wide line. That it depends each thing over there. I don't allow you to use a scale, even if you're going to use not a weight, you'll use a kli and a kofis on the other side of the scale, because sometimes people do that on the weekday, so it's close enough to do the whole. But over here, it's not considered doing a weekday thing when you use a measuring cup. Why is that? Here the Gemara does that on a few words. So sometimes people would serve wine in a measuring cup and they'll drink. A guest comes, they give them a measuring cup. Nowadays, I don't think it's going to happen. But in those days, sometimes the person would use a measuring cup to serve wine. So if you use it as a regular jug, so it's also permissible. It's not anyantiv because it's not considered uvda l'chol. That's the end of the sugya of the first issue. We had a machlokas between Tanakam and Abu Yehuda, something about measuring. Everybody holds something is asa. According to Shmuel, everybody agreed that you're not allowed to use a measuring cup. Machlokas was if you're allowed to use a kli which you happen to know what the measurement is. And according to Rava, you're surely allowed to use a kli which is not a measuring cup. Machlokas is, are you allowed to use a measuring cup? According to Tanakama, you may, as long as you don't say it's a measuring cup. Just say malili klizeh, fill this up. Don't say what it is. And according to Yehuda, since it's a measuring cup, you're not allowed to use it. And the halacha seems to be like Rava, according to the Chachamim, that says you're allowed to even use a measuring cup as long as you don't say so. But we're going to see soon at the bottom of the page, there is going to be an issue about measuring in a measuring cup. It seems it is going to be asa. It could be that's only mutter over here because we're talking about buying and selling, and you're coming to fill up your cup. So then you can use a measuring cup. But if you're mamish measuring, you're going to measure and put it into you're using it mamish as a measuring cup, as an emtsai. You're not just going to fill it up and take it home. You're going to measure it into your next container. Then everybody holds the whole that it's asa. The whole issue over here was only using it as a container. Are you allowed to use a measuring cup as a container? But to use a measuring cup as a measuring cup, it seems everybody holds it as asa, and that's going to be the next thing coming up soon. But on the second line, and first the Gemara goes into the issue about Abu Shol ben Batnis. What do we say? That Tanakama, Rav Yehuda seemed to be derived from him because he was machmir not to measure on Yantif. He would prepare it before Yantif. But then Abu Shol said, no, he did it on Chol HaMoed, and the other one said he even did it on the weekday. So here goes the Gemara. Tana, after Moed also came if they bittul based on Medrash. So this is why they took out the Girsa in the Mishnah if they Biru Midos, because here it says the reason why he's Machman Cholamod is because he didn't want to waste time in the base Medrash. So Rashi says that and the Cholamod people didn't work, and they want more people in the base Medrash. Abu Shol ben Batis had more to do, more people asking questions maybe, and he had to be in the base Medrash more. Even though he had this grocery store, he had this, he was selling wine, whatever it is, but he didn't have time to pour it out to everybody. So he would make pre-measured bottles, packages, and therefore people would come and he would be able to give it them right away. He wouldn't have to spend a lot of time in the store. He can go to the Beis Medrash. Rashi also connects the other Gersa, and back to the Mishnah, there was a Gersa that said B'nei Biru Midos. So either Rashi took it out. Here's the words of Rashi, B'nei Biru Midos, before they take it out. Some took it out because here the Gemara says make little base of Medrash. But Rashi says you can have the Gersa also. Biru Midos, Rashi explains, means the foam. So foam, when you pour something like beer, mambish foams. Here it's not talking about beer, it's talking about wine. So I don't know that wine foams. Maybe it's talking about when it's fermenting still, when it's in an early stage. But let's talk about beer, let's say, just for our own understanding, that if you're going to pour out beer, you have to wait a long time until the foam goes down in order to get the whole measurement in. So he didn't want to waste all that time. So in the weekday, he had time. But in the Chol Hamoed, you have to go right away to the Beis Medrash. So he didn't want to wait till he was able to measure out and wait for all the foam to go down, then fill it up again, and then it gets foam again, and then you have to wait the whole time. So therefore, he did it before the night before, and therefore, Abu Shol is saying, don't bring it right from Abu Shol ben Batis that he's Machman Yantif. He wasn't Machman Yantif, he did it because he was busy. On Chol Hamoed and Yantif, he had to be in the Beis Medrash, and he didn't have time to wait until the foam went down, and therefore, either the foam or because Stam, he didn't want to wait until it takes time to pour out all the kalim. So therefore, he did it before. And then it's not a raya about being machmir on Hilchas Yantif.
So he did it Erev Yantif?
He did it Erev Yantif, or Rashi says that he did it on Chol Hamoed. He did it each night when the Medrash was finished. So then he would prepare the kalim that he's going to sell tomorrow. It doesn't have to be dafka. On the case of Yantif, he did it Erev Yantif. Chol Hamoed, he did it maybe also from Erev Yantif, or he did it on the night. And Chol Hamoed, when he wasn't in the Beis Medrash, then he was filling up the kalim that he's going to sell tomorrow, whatever wine he's going to sell tomorrow. Now the Gemara goes into the subject, second white line, about what we spoke about, that even in the weekday, there's an issue sometimes also to be machmir, because you don't want to steal from the people, from the customers. You have a measuring cup, and you're going to fill it into the customer's bottle, and you're giving him the measurement based on your measuring cup, not on his measuring cup. He doesn't have a measuring cup. You have a measuring cup, and you're going to fill it up according to you. But if there's a foam or something like that, it looks like it's full, and that's really not full. Or if it has oil and it has a lot of drops that take a long time to ooze out, and you're not going to wait until it comes all out. You didn't give him the full measurement. That's the issue even about the whole week about Gezel. That's what the Gemara talks about now. Second white line, Tanur Rabbanan, who kanas shlosh me'as gar b'yayin b'biru midos. V'chaverav kansu shlosh me'as gar b'shemen b'mitzia midos. That it seems that the Rashi says that the customers didn't always want to wait. He was willing to wait, and he on Chol Hamoed even made pre-measured packages. But the whole year round, he didn't make pre-measured, and he would want to fill out, pour out the whole measuring cup into the customer's kli. But the customer sometimes didn't want to wait. They didn't want to wait until the phone went down. They said it's good, I got to run. And if the oil didn't yet ooze out, they said I don't have time for this, and they left. And it comes out that he had extra in his. Let's say, I should give an example. He had a barrel that had 100 liters, and he sold 100 liters one at a time, and then he still had left over in the barrel. Why? He should have finished the whole barrel if he sold 100 liters one at a time, because not everybody waited to get the full measurement. So he had leftover in his barrel, and they didn't feel good about that. So it says that Abu Shol ben Batis had 300, maybe it's an sometimes the word 300 is, the number 300 is exaggeration sometimes, but he had 300 barrels. What is that?
I said Guzman.
Yeah. But the words are 300 barrels of wine that he got extra from the leftovers that people didn't take. Or his friends who sold oil, they had 300 barrels of oil because of the mitzvah that people didn't want to wait until the whole thing oozed out. So they didn't want to keep it. They brought it to the Gizborim in Yerushalayim to Hektish, that they wanted to be makdish it. Amulahem, so Rashi says that doesn't mean the Gizborim. Here Rashi puts in the word Chachamim. Amulahem, the Chachamim said to them, you don't have to, it's yours. You don't have to makdish it because it belongs to you, because the customers didn't want it. Amulahem, they said, we don't want it. I don't want to have other people's money. I don't want presents. It's really belongs to other people. They didn't want to take it, but I don't want it. Amulahem, hold Martam Alasmachem, Masumahem Sachi Rabbim. You want to be machmir, so Rashi says, don't do hektish. Hektish has nothing to do with the issue. So do tzarchi rabbim. Tzarchi rabbim means do something that the public will benefit from, and that way it's considered that you returned it to the people who really it belongs to. Now, really, there's no real gezel over here at all because the people themselves are the ones who said they don't want it. They wanted to leave. But since they would have taken this really just that they were in a rush, so he wanted to give it back to them. So he said he can't give it back to them, but do tzarchi rabbim. And that's the Gemara says, the Tanya, if somebody stole, but he doesn't know from who he stole, so that's really a big problem because he doesn't know how to give it back to the rightful owner. But at least he should do tzarchi rabbim. This is not like the case over here is that it's not a chumrah, but the case of the gezel is not a chumrah. He stole, really he's supposed to give back to the rightful owner, and he doesn't know who to give it to. So the best he can do is tzarchi rabbim. I do a tzarchi rabbim so he can hope that the person that he stole from will benefit indirectly. They'll fix the sidewalk. The Gemara is going to say something about making bar shich and amoras. To make places, ditches where the water will fill up, and then the rabbin will benefit from it. And you could hope that one that you stole from will benefit from it one day as much as the value of what you stole from him. And over here, there's mamish no chiyuv to give anything back because we said the people are mochel. But if you want to do something for the people, so do something tzarchi rabbim. So instead of being makdish it, better to give it to the public needs. Okay, the Gemara goes right now about measuring. 4 lines from the bottom. Adre Rav Chisda l'Ravana Ukva v'Darash. So Rav Chisda was Adre. We had this word once before, and here Rashi says that it means he led him. He walked with him, and he darshan. Rav Ben says a little different. Rav Ben says it means that he taught him to say, like the lashon of dibur. You have the word yadber, and yadber amam tachtenu. People say before tkiyah shofar, it means to lead, and also it means speech. So Ben Chanal says that it means speech. Rav Chisda taught Ravana Ukva to say the following drasha. He said, so we're talking about measuring now. So far we spoke about measuring in the store, that a client's coming to buy something, so it says, how do you measure it out? Now we're talking about somebody in his house. That you're not allowed to measure out barley for your own animal, even though there's no buying and selling here. You're not going to a store. You have barley. You want to give a certain measurement to your animal, to your donkey. So it says, don't measure it out. And before we said, even though we said we passed before, like Rava pointed out Chachamim, that you're allowed to use a measuring cup as long as you don't say it's a measuring cup. You don't say Mali li klizeh. It happens to be a liter measuring cup. So we said you're allowed to. That's over there because you're using it as a cup, as a container. You're filling it up. But over here, Imam is just measuring it out. So you're not. It seems everybody holds that you're not allowed to use a measuring cup to measure. So therefore, it says a person should not measure out barley and give to his animal on Yom Tov. But avokodu kavod kavayim. But also, there's a way to do it. If you use the measuring cup as a shovel, so to speak, that you're going to shovel it out with that cup. So it happens to be a measuring cup. But if you're going to measure it out and put it into like Rashi says, usually when you have a measuring cup, so you take with your hands or with some shovel to put it into the measuring bowl, the measuring bushel, and then you know how much it is. So don't do that. There's not much measuring. But if you use it itself to shovel out the solarium from whatever container it's in, so it happens to be that you did get the right amount, but you know how much it is. But using it as a shovel right now, that's permissible. Another halacha about measuring. Somebody that's cooking. Usually, anachta means a baker. Rashi says here it seems to mean a cook. That a cook is also allowed to measure spices and to put into the pot because you have to know how much spices. You can't just do it without measuring. So in order that it shouldn't ruin his tafshil, the word yakdiach literally means to burn. It doesn't mean burn. It means burning the spices. You're going to put in too much pepper. So you're allowed to use a measuring device, a measuring spoon, in order to know how much spices you have to put in. So even though there's issur to measure, this did in asa. And the third thing, is a woman allowed to measure how much flour she's using? She wants to make a dough and she has to have flour. So it seems, from the Gemara alone, it seems that even though we had a heter a second ago, when you need the right amount of spices, you're allowed to measure. So I might think you're allowed to use a measuring cup also to know how much flour and water. But that it seems not. It seems that a woman, they would know enough. If they have flour, they put water, they can tell already how much water they need. So it wouldn't be necessary to measure exact how much flour you have. But the reason why you are allowed to measure, according to Muhammad Diyamar, Rav says you are allowed to measure flour because you should take challah generously. So that Rashi says that if you don't allow it to measure, you're supposed to take challah a 24th. Nowadays we don't, because anyway it's challah tmeya. It's not going to go to the coin anyway, so there's no reason to give a lot of challah. But when now you just take a little bit. Some are machmer kazayis, but really even a mashu was enough. So In those days, when you give the challah to the Kohen, so you're supposed to give a 24th of how big your dough is. That's a lot. So if a person does not measure by nachman 48, by they make it by nachman, but by your balabai, it's all 24. So there's a certain amount you're supposed to give for challah. So if you don't measure it, so she might be skimpy. She might underestimate. So we want to make sure that you don't underestimate. So therefore, you could measure the amount of flour in order to make sure that you're giving the right amount of the right amount of challah. And Shmuel says no, you're not allowed to. He's not scared about this thing of giving too little challah, so it's us. But everybody holds that if not for the seti, you wouldn't be allowed to measure flour. So we have three halachas over here. The first one was about measuring barley for your animal, that you're not allowed to. Second one is that you are allowed to measure spices in order not to ruin the dish. And the third one is that flour, machlokes, you're allowed to measure flour in order to make sure you're giving the right amount of challah. The Gemara in the bottom line has the contradiction. Shmuel said that you're not allowed to measure flour. But Tana the Shmuel mutter. In the yeshiva of Shmuel, they said over a brisa. Tana the Shmuel means that in the yeshiva of Shmuel, they said over a brisa that says it's mutter. And Shmuel himself said asa. How is he going against the brisa that they learned in his yeshiva? I'm Rabbi Hashadam Shmuel asa. But Tana the Shmuel mutter. Shmuel, Allah Shmuel, Allah asa lashmina. That the Brisa says that it's mutter, and Shmuel says that it's asa. So he's going to say Allah said that he should not do it. Rashi explains at the bottom of Bamad Aleph that it's called Allah Bein Moran Kain. That even though the Allah is that it's mutter, but the Maisa don't say so. So in the Allah Maisa, he said that it's asa. So technically it would be mutter, like Rav says, because of the issue of challah, but the Maisa don't do it. Tan Rabbana. Now we finished about measuring. Now the Gemara is going to go into an issue about borer, which is not our subject at all. But since we spoke about kemach, so it seems that's going to be a related topic about the flour. When you make a dough, so you measure it, if you're allowed to or not. Then the issue is about sifting it. So are you allowed to sift it? So we had an issue a long time ago. Bisham said, "Are you allowed to be borer and yantif?" And we said that according to Bisham, you're allowed to be borer kedarko. You can't use a kanon tamcho. You can't use professional tools. That's made for a lot, a big quantity, but you're allowed to be borer and yantif. Here it says that this issue about sifting flour. Rashi seems to say that you're not allowed to sift flour on yantif because you could have done it beforehand. The other things we allow you to be borer is maybe because you couldn't have done it beforehand. Maybe, I'm not sure, but I'm just suggesting maybe the reason here Rashi says you could have done it before, so you're not allowed to sift for the first time. So the first sifting is when you say we at home we don't usually do the sifting anymore because you get a bag of flour. But when they used to have homemade, everything was homemade out of the field, so you had to sift in order to get the bran off, so the chaff and then the bran. So that seems you're not allowed to do on Yom Tov. But the question is, are you allowed to do a second sifting in order to make it even cleaner? That's more mutter because Rashi says that it's edible the way it is, and it's just like an extra pinuk, something extra finicky, and also it's not a big tircha. It's already the second sifting, so really most of it goes through. So that's why it might be mutter. That's machlokes. Tanrav one and ein shonen b'kemach b'yom tov. Yeshua b'shpapi Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseir amu shonen. Machlokes, are you allowed to sift for the second time? The word shonen means like the double, the second time. Shnayim. So are you allowed to double? Are you allowed to sift the second time the flour? The first time we show you're not allowed to, it seems, but the question is the second time. So Tanakama says you're not allowed to, but in the name of Pampus and Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseir, they said that you are allowed to. Machlokes, if you're allowed to sift the second time, Rashi says the reason why the second time might be more lenient is because you're not really doing anything, so it's not really borer, and it's not a big tircha. But somebody says that you're not allowed to. Machlokes. Tanakama says no, and the Pampus and Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseir say you may. The Shovin, Shem Nafal Tzach and Sora Kesem Shovin. Everybody agrees, even the one who says you're not allowed to, that if a pebble or a splinter fell into it, it seems on Yantif, that you couldn't have done it yesterday because it fell on Yantif now. Then you're allowed to do it the second time again because now you couldn't have done it. We tell you you should have done it earlier. But this you couldn't have done earlier because it fell and now it got ruined. So now do it a second time. This Mandama seems to say that don't do it the second time, even if a pebble fell on Yantif. If a pebble fell on a yontif, so then take it out by hand. Don't do a second sifting in order to get out the pebble or splinter that fell in. Take out the pebble by hand. Yeah.
You get away from butter.
So I would think that the Gemara says right away the kasha amalei kolch can't do it. Definitely borer. So he says no, you can't do that. You do by hand. You're doing borer. Better to do it a second time, and that's going to be mutter. So I don't understand that Mom don't have upshot because we said before the borer is mutter. So Boris Mutar Yantiv. So I'm not sure why the Gemara makes it. Here the Gemara makes something like Boris Zasa, and Rashi doesn't say anything. I don't understand. The Gemara before in the beginning of the Masechta, Beishami says you're not allowed to be Boris. Beisol says Boris Kedarko. So what's the problem? Taking it out by hand? That's the halacha. So I don't understand why you're not allowed to. I didn't look into it, but just learning, I don't understand. The first Tana Katana said that do it a second time means he'd rather you do it with the sifter a second time, which is mostly just like a pinuk, and even though you'll get the kesema, that doesn't bother him. But to do it by hand bothers him very much, which I don't understand. The Chorah is much worse than doing it by hand. So I didn't get shot in this Gemara. I don't know. The Gemara continues about.
It's just a beer is rice.
Yes, on Shabbos, but now Yantiv, you're allowed to do Ochel Nefesh. So Ochel Nefesh is but these things that we said is Borer, but Beisil says he's allowed to do Borer.
But we qualified it. It depends the Eichel or the Psilis.
Yeah. So right. So here it's one pebble fell in. Borer Kiso. This is Ochel Mubal Psola. So take out the Psolas. That's why he came out over there. So what's the problem? I don't understand why Borer should be a problem over here. It's less tircha, and it's that's they had a person. Beishamai had a problem with Borer, but Beisil didn't. Beisil said Borer Kedarko. So I don't understand. And this Gemara is saying that better to use the sifter than a second time than to use your hand. I almost don't understand. Okay, next Gemara. I'm sorry leaving it as a question. I didn't get it over here. Darash Rava Bar Huna Zuti Episcopal Nayada. So we're talking about this second sifting, which was said on top of the pages of Machlokas. I allowed to sift the second time to make it even extra fine. So some said yes, some said no. So here it's going to say that some said that it's mutter. Huna Zuti, he darshaned by the gateway to Narada, I guess by the city entrance. He said, Shonin Kemach Yamtiv. You're allowed to sift the second time on Yamtiv. Like Mandama says that you're allowed to. Alu of Nachman, Kuku Vemud Leila Abba, Shkila Tivusach, Shedeach Hizri, Tuk Chazi, Kama Multa Hadrin Benada. So Rav Nachman said, go and tell Abba. Abba usually means somebody Choshev or father. Rashi says here means Chaveri. So Rav, I'm sorry, I said Rafuna. Rav Zuti is the one who said this drasha on the gateway of Narada. And Rav Nachman said, go tell him, Abba, which he says this means my friend, that your favor is thrown on the thorns. Means we have no reason to be grateful for your favor. It means it didn't do anything to us. Take the favor and throw it on the thorns. Look, Chazik, go and see how many sifters there are draying around in Arda. Means Rashi says everyone knows this halach. Everyone's doing it. You didn't come with a chiddush. If we would have held an Arda that you're not allowed to sift the second time, and you came to us at Russia that you're allowed to, everyone would have been grateful to you. But everybody knows that. Everybody's doing it. That's the minhag pashut in Arda. Everybody sifted for the second time. So there was a machlokes Tanam before. Machlokes Tanam, yes, I think it was the top of the page. Tanam, yeah, it was Tanur Rabbana, and you're not allowed to. The Papa said we said you are. Them said you are allowed to. So that was a minhag pashut in Arda. Everybody was shown in. So it's not a chiddush to say that you're allowed to. Everybody does it. Another story, now the Gemara is going to say that there were some people that were machmir to make a shinu, that they did do it a second time, but they made a shinu. The Visa, the Rav Yosef, the wife of Rav Yosef, she would sift the flour for the second time on the back of the sifter. She held the sifter upside down, and she sifted it the other way. And she wanted to do a shinu. She was doing shonin, she was doing it the second time, but she was doing a shinu. Allah, Rav Yosef said to his wife, Chazida, na rifta mel yasabina. Yes, make sure that it's going to be good bread. It means I don't want to do this chumrah if it's not going to be good. It means it's unnecessary. Unnecessary to make a shinui. Shonen, you're allowed to sift the second time without a shinui. So don't do a shinui because it's not going to come out as good. Another story, the visit the Ravashi now lakim chagav the psara. The wife of Ravashi, she was sifting the kemach also the second time around, that on the back of the table. So Rashi means the upside down table. And Taisa says you don't say upside down table. Top of the table, it's called the back of the table. So she did it onto the table. Usually when you sift flour, you put it into a bowl. But she did it onto the table. So that was her shinui. And that's maybe a chiddush to be considered. First of all, the Gemara said maybe you don't need a shinui. She was doing a shinui. But the Gemara is going to be impressed that that's good enough of a shinui. Means Ravashi is going to say on his wife that if she does that shinui, that's good enough. You don't have to do more than that. Ravashi, how did he done?
We should do it in a bowl.
Right. So this is a shinui. And he's saying you do need a shinui. But this shinui is good enough. Rashi said, "How did you done? Rate the Rami Barachama, my wife, ours means my wife. My wife is the daughter of Rami Barachama. Rami Barachama Mar Duvdava. Rami Barachama was a big medaktik b'maisim, and if she did it, she got it from him, and you can trust that. the love the chazim and bein shel love avda. If she wouldn't have seen it by her father, she wouldn't have done it. So my wife got it from her father, and he's a big medactic, he's a big machmir. If he did it, it's good enough. So the Gemara had machlokas if you're allowed to be shonen, if you're allowed to sift a second time, and even those that said you are, even though some possibly are allowed to, there were those that were machmir to do a shinui. Some said you don't need a shinui, and Rav Ashi said that this shinui is good enough, but maybe you do need a shinui. So it seems that we're going to pass yes to do a shinui, either to do the back of the sifter or onto the table. That's enough of a shinui. And Tais talks about if this is only the second, the Chorah Hogan must talk about the second time around. The first time around, you're not allowed to, but you're taking the mamish, the psolos out of that. And nowadays we don't have the Matthias at all, but we get it in the packages already. But if she would want to sift it the first time, Tais talks about that a shinui is maybe not enough. Tais doesn't rely on the shinui for the first time around. Only for the second time around, that's when the Gemara talks about using the shinui.
You could sift for the first time.
So that's what it seems not. You're not allowed to sift for the first time. The whole issue of Gemara is only the second time when you're doing it extra fine, extra good. Next Mishnah about counting. So we spoke about weighing and measuring, now about counting. So you go to the store and you want to have 20 eggs. Could you say amount of eggs? Yes, you could say number. And how come number is different than weighing and measuring? Because counting is not something that's done in the stores only. Counting you do at home also. So, you need whatever, 5 eggs. You say, bring me 5 eggs. It's not something that's done on a commercial level. If it's commercial, that's why we're concerned about it. It shouldn't look like we'll do the whole. And sometimes we even ask the things in the house because it's really something done commercially. But the counting is something that you do in the house, and therefore it's not over the whole last mutter. So you let it go to the store and ask the storekeeper for 20 eggs. And then after Yontif, you're going to pay him for it. But the actual counting out is not a problem of weekday. It's not over the whole because people count at home also. The Mark gives very many examples now. Most of the examples are only asking for one. So there's not counting at all. I'm not sure what the Chiddush is at all. So the Chiddush of the Brisa seems not to be that you're allowed to count. That's only going to be the blessing of the Brisa about counting. But here, the point is you're allowed to go. It's not considered buying and selling. If you go to the community grocer or whatever it might be over here, baker, and you can ask him for an item, you're allowed to do that. Just agav, this usually doesn't happen to us. Nowadays, the stores are not open on Yontif. They don't have such a thing. But it does happen here in the Rova, especially, that you have the Goyish stores that are open. Are you allowed to go in and just take milk and say shalom, and he'll write down whatever he wants to write down? That's his business. I don't tell him to write down. Is it permissible? Here it says on Yontif you're allowed to do it. Are you allowed to do it on Shabbos with a Goyish store? So I'm just leaving it open.
Said yes.
Yeah, said yes. Okay. There was in the Rova, there were people that do it. There are people that do it. Some people made some noise about it. Some people said yes. Some people said not. Moshe is telling us that Rav Neves said that it's okay. So just to point out that people on the street, they're coming down Orach Chaim and they see the Jews going in and out of the store. They don't know what's happening. They're not used to that. But he's saying that Rav Neves said that it's mutter. Okay. There was some talk about it. I don't know, but we have the testimony of Moshe. Tani Rabbanan. And you tell him, you can go to the your usual shepherd that you do business with, and you can tell him, give me a goat, give me a sheep. And then after Yontif, you already talk after Yontif how much you owe him. So you go to your butcher and you tell him, give me a calf. They say a calf is like a katef, like the shoulder meat, or a yerech, the thigh. And then again, you'll talk to him after Yontif how much you owe him. These are the ones who raise the birds. So you could go to him. The word patam sounds like he fattens them, and you tell him, give me a pigeon or a dove, whatever it might be.
I'm scared to say the word shtab.
Which word?
Shtab.
What is that? I'm sorry?
In certain
A stuffer, patam. Yeah, stuffer, yeah. And here it says, as you go to the baker that you used to, and you tell him, give me a loaf or a certain cake. So Chenveni now goes to the issue about numbers. Till now there was no numbers, everything was one. But now he goes to the Chenveni, he goes to the grocer, whatever he needs. He has a whole shopping list: 20 eggs, 50 walnuts, 10 peaches, 5 pomegranates, 1 esrog. That's his list, shopping list for Yontif, and he goes on Yontif and he gives him all these things. Then after Yontif, he'll tell him what he bought. Now it goes to one more chumrah here, then to the parak.
No, they came out with the thing on the Grover thing that they told you don't eat any of the S.
It's Rogan because they have a lot of pesticides. Pesticides. So then people don't. Right. People don't eat it anyway because they don't. Right. What do? They make all kind of marmalade, jams, and they put a lot of sugar. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Over the while, every year, all these years. Now, once the ones that are commercial, so they make sure that it shouldn't have any bugs and things like that. So they use a lot of pesticides and poison. They talk about if it's royal achila. It's supposed to be royal achila. Now it's not royal achila anymore. It's supposed to be lachem. It has to be at least royal achila. So nowadays that it's not because of all the pesticides. Okay. So it ends off. Don't say a schom midah. So Rashi says, what is a schom midah? Don't say the measure. Means you're allowed to say number, but you can't say a measure. And that was a mission before that says don't talk about measurements. And Tyson says that it's pasha that you're not allowed to. Tyson says that changes the word. I'm sorry, he changed the word schom midah to schom minyan. That midah shul you're not allowed. That's the mission before. You can't talk about measurements, but number you are allowed to. But even here, schom minyan. Don't say so. Rashi Tyson said what does the word schom minyan mean? The schom means like the total, to sum it up. So Taisa says that you have a running bill in the store, and you say, "No, I just took 20 eggs, and I already had another 30 eggs that I owe you. So altogether, I owe you 50 eggs now." So don't say that. You're allowed to talk about how many eggs you want now, but don't talk about don't tally it up how much I owe you now. That's called the schom midah to make a total, and that you're not allowed to do. But you could say the number. He's coming. According to Taisa's strategy, he's coming to be lenient and say, I just don't allow that. He should say how much you owe him in money, how much money you owe him. That you can't say. But you could say how many you owe him in the number. That if you, even though now you ask 20 eggs, and you're allowed to say, according to Hashem Allah, you're allowed to say that I owe you already 30 eggs before. So altogether now there's going to be 50 eggs that I owe you. That's machlokas. The way Taisus learns, that's machlokas. What we're talking about, according to Tanakama, you may not say a schom minyan. You can't total up how many pieces you owe him. And if Shemala says you may, you just may not say how much money you owe him. Okay, so that's the halachas about buying and selling a yontif. And again, all the halachas are true, but we don't have it because we don't do the Metzias. We don't do nowadays. The stores are closed nowadays. But it could be that it has ramifications for Shabbos by the Goyish store. But what you're allowed to say that shouldn't be considered business. Okay, Yeshikoach everybody. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. What are you saying?
Let's put it on. We have two sheets.
It's schom meka. So Taisus changes the word midah to minyan. Midah, it changes to minyan. You're allowed to count, but you're not allowed to tally up altogether how much you owe, how many pieces you owe him now. Some total of the minyan. The egg, right? And thank you. And Rabbi Shimon also says that you may, as long as
Okay, thank you very much, Rabbi.
Well, who's that? I'm sorry.
I'm missing. I'm about to board the plane.
I'm sorry.
I'm about to board the plane. Thank you very much.
You're boarding the plane. Wow, you're amazing. It should be in a Siyat Tova. And Mazel Tov and much nachas. Everything should go Baslacha Rabbah.
Amen. Thank you very much.
Siyat Tova. See you when you get back, Bezrash.
Amen. Where are you?
The post office. I have to pay my rent. I'm in a line. Okay. All the best. But I learned. I have the Zoom. It's beautiful.
Beautiful. Thank you.
All the best. Thank you.
Thank you.